Episode 5 of 7 Worlds, 1 Planet is called Europe. So this episode opens up giving us an overview of various landmarks, various cities across Europe, and we talk about how Europe is the most built up of all the continents, and despite being the smallest, it's one of the most densely populated, which is interesting because I think Europe is the hardest one to kind of pin a theme to. I feel like the rest of them, there's kind of things you could talk about, there's really iconic places on every other continent. I think we tend not to think of Europe as being a particularly wild place, so this episode kind of does highlight that at the beginning. But then we move to the Finnish forests, which is probably some of the most wild places in Europe, and here we see brown bears. We see a family of brown bears. The cubs have newly emerged, they're out playing, and this male comes along, and they've got to run up a tree, and the mum has to scare that male away because he will kill the cubs to bring her into heat. And it's an alright sequence. I kind of feel like a lot of these sequences are pretty similar. However, it did undeniably have tension. I was like, okay, shit, are the Cubs going to be fine? Obviously they would, because this series aired at like 6:30, and they weren't going to show baby bears getting killed, before the watershed. So they were going to be fine, but I was still faced with some tension. So I did actually like that more than I thought I would. And to be fair, it is actually very well filmed as well. It's a really well filmed bit of footage. Then we go north, and here we see muskox. So the muskox in the tundra are pretty good as well. Again, I think muskox do tend to pop up a lot in these series. I feel like I talk about muskox a lot. Maybe that's just because I did Frozen Planet 1 and 2 this year. It's nothing really new. It's two males fighting over a harem of females. It is a pretty epic battle. It's in slow motion. You get a good sense of the power of these animals. But it does kind of play out how all these sequences do. You tend to just pick a male that you root for, and then we see them fighting, and inevitably that male will win. It's still a good sequence by all means, but it's nothing really new. And I think it doesn't feel that groundbreaking, to be honest, watching it again, but it's still fine. Then we go to another one of the most wild places in Europe, and that's the Alps. And here we see there's all these villages in the Alps, and they look really cool. I kind of want to visit them. And here we talk about wolves. So the wolf sequence is all filmed in infrared, which is really good. And I think back in the day when Life of Mammals came out, we got a lot of infrared stuff, because they really, had pioneered it at the time. But it kind of died off for a while, I think, when HD became a thing. People stopped talking about infrared. But I think Planet Earth 2 with the leopards, and this series, kind of in particular for me, I think, did help bring it back. You saw a lot more infrared stuff after this series came out, so I think they did prove that infrared was actually a very good way of filming stories, particularly at night. You could show a lot more things that you wouldn't normally see, and we see a pack of wolves hunting red deer, which is cool. We've seen stuff like that before, but what I think makes this sequence stand out is the fact that it is in infrared. It is very haunting, the wolves are very ghost-like, and it is a very good hunt. You really do feel for the wolves because they've not eaten in ages. It's been like a week potentially since they've last made a kill, and you see the efforts they go to. It's not an easy hunt by any means, and it's interesting because it's so close to human habitation. You see a lot of buildings in the background when they're hunting, which again shows you that, these animals are pretty much on the doorstep of humans, despite the fact that humans want to keep them out. It is interesting looking at how humans are both a help and a hindrance to the wolves, because on one hand they're able to walk along the roads much more quietly and are able to get on top of the deer in a way that they wouldn't if they were trudging through the snow. The road is also instrumental in the wolves actually making a kill, because they drive it onto the icy road and are able to bring it down. However, because they're so close to humans, they're so close to sheepdogs, and all these sheepdogs come out, scare them off. The dogs are actually a lot bigger than the wolves. We tend to think of wolves as being massive, and to be fair, they are. But these dogs were definitely beefier than the wolves were, not because they'd eaten so long, but they'd drive the wolves off. So while we've watched these wolves spend a lot of time, a lot of effort bringing down this deer, ultimately it was all for nothing because the dogs just scare it away. It was a very good sequence. It was very effective at showing you the positives and negatives of animals cohabiting with humans. It was a really good part of the episode. Probably the best part, to be honest. It was really, really good. And then we go to Gibraltar in the very south of Spain, the very southern end of Europe, to be honest. And here we see macaques. I think that the Barbary macaques in Gibraltar are pretty famous just because they are the only monkeys in Europe. And this is an alright sequence. We see a mother and her young, we talk about the caste system, we see another macaque kidnap her child, and she has to go after it and try and bring it back, but because that female's of a higher status than her, it's not so easy just to groom another macaque to get her baby back. It's quite interesting. To be honest with you, considering it was something I was probably looking forward to most about this episode at the time, it's probably a sequence that hasn't really stood with me that much. I think it's good, it's well filmed, and it is cool seeing Barbary macaques in Gibraltar, because that's something I hadn't seen before and I was always wanting to see. But it was ultimately good. It kind of felt like a lot of these kind of monkey sequences, but again, by all means, still good, still well filmed, still a good part of the episode. And then we go to Austria, we go to Vienna, we see the graveyards, and here we see hamsters. So this is probably one of the more iconic sequences from the series. Weirdly, it's probably one of the funniest parts of the series, because a lot of people lay flowers on graves. That's perfect food for the hamsters, which I find quite funny in a really morbid way. And we see the hamsters fighting over territories. It's something that if they were bigger animals, it probably would be more of a brutal fight, but because they're hamsters and they're so small and quite cute, and they look quite funny because their cheeks are full of food, it's just really funny to watch. And it keeps going on with that one hamster that gets chased away. It's still trying to get to the flowers and has to use stealth mode to get past the other one. And he gets his head stuck in a candle holder. Really funny. It was just really good. It was probably one of the better parts of the episode. Considering it's just a kind of cutesy fun sequence, It is very good and very funny. And we talk about the Gulf Stream and how it's instrumental in creating the climate of Europe. That's fine. It's probably the weakest geography lesson we got in the series. Europe doesn't have as much interest in geography as the other continents, but that leads us on to the mayflies. So the mayfly sequence is pretty great, to be honest. These sequences are always great and they're always pretty epic, but I think this is maybe the best one, or it's the one I think of the most. We basically see the mayfly emergence, I think it's in Hungary, and all these males come out. They're obviously only going to be alive for so long because their whole purpose is to mate with the females. So when the females emerge, all these males just descend in the water, and it's properly pandemonium. There's so many mayflies in the water, it's really cool to look at. And once all the males mate with the females, they just die. There's nothing else for them to do. It's just a really weird mass rush to the water, and then a very brief mate, and then they die. But then the females have to then fly off downstream to, as far as they can, pretty much. You do feel like it's just an endurance, just like how far can we go? And then they drop down and lay their eggs and die as well. It's really interesting. It's very epic. And I think it's the sort of thing that, if you were there, you probably wouldn't really know much about it. You probably would think, oh, there's all these bugs out here, what's that all about? But it's so cool to look at because these things don't happen very often. It's very much in the same category as the cicadas for me. It's just really cool. Yeah, I really like that. It's one of the best parts of the episode for me. Then we go to the Danube Delta, and here we see pelicans, great white pelicans, which aren't usually found in Europe. You do tend to find them, but they're very much like a rare species. They don't see them very often. And here, all these pelicans are there. They're there to catch fish, but in order to get an easier meal, they basically find a massive flock of cormorants and mug them. So this is actually a pretty violent sequence. I think pelicans have popped up in a few sequences where they are definitely the villains. This and Life are the two ones that I really think of. Life being, a lot worse than this. But it's very interesting watching them just mug the cormorants. I feel like some of the cormorants probably do die here. The pelicans just grabbing their necks and just wringing them probably leads to a few breakages, I would think. And the pelicans are portrayed as pretty thuggish, pretty violent. We see how massive they are compared to the cormorants. It's very effective. And when the pelicans do eventually just leave, you do kind of feel like they're just like a band of rogues almost. We tend to think of pelicans as being quite comedic animals. But no, they are, pretty brutish, violent animals, to be honest. So I think that was good they highlighted that, and it was a pretty good sequence. And then we go into the caves. The cave systems are all cool. I like cave stuff. Just watching people explore caves was cool. All the weird stuff we found in there. The ohms, they were all great. All the cave stuff was great. It was very well filmed. It was just nice to see. Then we end the episode reiterating how built up Europe is, how not much is left for wildlife. It really is pretty terraformed. I know the other continents are pretty bad, but this is definitely worse. And then we end the episode with Iberian lynx. We talk about how there's not many of them left. They're very rare, and they're kind of only holding out in this one reserve at the south of Spain. And it's really nice seeing them. We see families as lynx. It's not so much in-depth behaviour we're getting, it's just a snapshot look at them. And I think that was pretty good. I did enjoy that. It was nice seeing them, and it did kind of leave you with an air of hope because they are doing better. It was a nice way of ending the episode. It wasn't too depressing. And this episode wasn't too depressing, to be fair. I feel like because Europe's been built up for so long, we're kind of all accepting of it compared to other places which have been more wild for longer. And the Diaries is all about the people filming the lynx and the wolves. It's two separate teams, and both are good. As I've said for other diary sequences in this series, I've enjoyed them all, but it hasn't really added much to the experience for me. I did kind of feel like with the lynx, you saw how much of a battle that was dealing with the rain, how much of a pain in the arse it was to actually film them because, they're pretty elusive. The wolves you feel like they had a little bit of an easier time with, but not by much. But both were interesting, both were good, I liked them both. So yeah, this episode is really good. Again, like every other episode in the series, it is pretty good. It feels a bit more understated, but I think because Europe is a more understated continent, I think they did still pick very good animals to look at in this episode. Highlights for me are the wolves hunting the red deer at night. That was great. It was a really good sequence. Other things, the mayflies, obviously, the hamsters I really like. Again, I like most things in this episode. There's a couple of things that, I've seen before, but I did enjoy it overall. It's a pretty good episode. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this episode. What were your highlights? Let me know. Next week I'll be doing the next one, which is all about North America, so look forward to that. And as ever, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, or don't if you don't want to. It's perfectly fine. And I'll see you next time, and goodbye.